Hello and welcome to... Great. Yeah, we were. Sorry you heard our babbling if you tuned in before that, but hello and welcome to Zatu Live. Sorry for the little eCam thing in the bottom. We're trialling out some new software. If it works, that logo will be gone. I'm here with Vince from Lucky Duck Games. They obviously have Kingdom Rush on Kickstarter right now, but they've also had a big success with Chronicles of Crime, so we're going to talk about those two things, and if you have any comments or questions, just add them in, and I might even be able to put them on the screen with this new Voodoo software, so we'll see. So, hi Vince, how are you doing?
Hi Nick, very good. Thanks so much for having me today.
And you're obviously in the middle of your Lucky Duck, that's your name, Kingdom Rush campaign. Could you tell us how that came about? How you came about to work with the IP of Kingdom Rush?
Yeah, actually, it's a very interesting story. So we have been well identified as the publisher that goes and get those IP, and we were working about a year and a half ago, or almost maybe 2 years ago, a while ago, at least a year and 8 months at least, with Jesse and Cinq Lim, with who we were just starting to work on Mutant. It's a Kickstarter we had in October last year, but at the time we were just starting to look at working with each other, and they're like, hey, there is this game called Kingdom Rush, it would be awesome if you could get it. And I was like, oh, I know Kingdom Rush, it's a great idea, why don't we, let me have a look. And I tried to contact those people, and for the story, Gonzalo from Thundergriff Games actually was also talking to them. And after a few exchanges, Gonzalo told me, listen, this is more of your jam than mine. Go ahead and chat with those people. After that, it still took me 8 months to convince them to make a board game with us. They were incredibly busy, very reactive. I mean, I can't blame them, right? So making board game is not exactly their core business.
Yeah.
And so answering this kind of email call took a long time. But every month I was sending an email, they said, hey guys, what's up? Can we move on this? And sometimes having no response months at a time. And it was around, I would say, around July last year that they finally answered the call.
Okay.
And they said, okay, we are ready to move on. We had about a month of negotiation, and that was it. The process from there on for us is always the same when it comes to IPs. We believe that making an IP adaptation is probably one of the hardest challenge there is out there, because it not only needs to be a good board game, it also has to embody the video game's emotions, yet without going too far and remaining a good board game. And so instead of creating an internal bottleneck and pretending we know the truth about this kind of stuff, what we do is that we create a kind of private contest with some game designer we trust.
Okay.
And we send them basically an invitation and propose, offer them to propose a very early prototype within the next 2 to 3 months after we reach out to them. The idea for them is also not to go too far. We don't want to waste their time either, because only one of the 14 will be taken. But that's a very, very interesting exercise for us as a publisher, because it gives us a very wide range of ideas explored. And that's how, surprisingly, we never expected it, but we worked again with Senfong and Jesse and Elana Hope, who actually is a partner of Jesse, on this. They were the very last design being submitted. And we already had our eyes on 2 other designs, which were kind of competing as the fitting, and they just dropped this like, oh my goodness, this is it. That is the game we're looking for. It was fresh, it was different, it was challenging. Also, what we discovered through the process is that every single competitive tower defense we tried ended up being, how do you call it, like kind of just a very multiple solo experience that was just not very fun. I mean, they reached everybody, And the only way you could interact was just having negative interaction with each other,
Sure,
but
yeah.
just trying to, and we just didn't like that. And so it became clear that it had to be a cooperative game to really embody this. The second challenge, the really big challenge that they really managed to solve here, is that a tower defense by nature is a genre that comes from the video game, and the video game does a lot of stuff for the players,
Yes.
so that you don't have to maintain things. It maintains life for like hundreds of units at a time, move them automatically, and so you don't want the player to become like a simulator, moving all these guys one by one. Update. So this one has how many HP? 2 HP. Did you put the token? Okay, and this one. Oh, did we put the token here? You get the idea. So, what was really clever with their design is that they basically managed to put all the sword into one card that you move one at a time.
Yes.
And the HP maintenance is as simple as are they covered or not. And it just was on top of this really clever puzzle and this kind of Tetris-shaped polyominoes used. It was clever all around. So we got really excited. So from there on, we spent months developing the game. Actually, first of all, they took one really hard month of work on their side. I'm super grateful because the three of them have been really hard working on this. We've had a really spectacular team here between the internal development team, which is led by Filip Miłunski and Michał Gombumski, where the one is our creative director and the other one is our game developer. And the author themselves, the three authors, it's like a really amazing group of talented game designers who are like pushing the envelope on this thing in a way that, I mean, I'm just watching this with absolutely amazement. And so moving from that, we really got the game into a really solid structure in January. Say we just add a couple levels. We're like, that's it. That's the game we want to have. And from there on, we've been building more levels, kind of diversifying the past. And so that's how we could start planning the Kickstarter and be where we are today.
Okay, sorry about that. The trial software apparently has a 10-minute limit, so we're just going to do this in parts, and I'll maybe stitch it together for YouTube later. So I was just saying that the bits that when you read in the rules you feel will be a disconnect with the app are actually really, really clever and fit with the app. For example, using your heroes in the app, you don't keep your hero back and worry about them losing health. You send them in, and the timing is important, but getting them back is part of the game. Yeah. And that works really, really well in the prototype.
It does, and actually, that point that really worried me actually turns out to be the key to make it interesting all the time. Because it's true that, I mean, when you look at a tower defense from a video game perspective, it has this very slow progression where you basically actually at some point spend a lot of time just watching it, right? You've made your decision and you let your decision unfold. And if we do this as a 4-player tower defense where we're all going to just be a machine just looking at the unfolding decision we've made, and that's just not going to work, right? I mean, we all need to be on our toes and should all be making decisions all the time. And so they found this really great narrative around the timage and the warping and movement of those towers that from a story perspective justifies it, and from a board game adaptation was the key to make it really like a really good game.
Yeah, and the tower thing as well, that was the other thing, passing the towers on. The ones you don't use. At first you're kind of like, I want to use all my towers, but then you suddenly realise this is the only way to upgrade. And again, I think the reason I'm no good at the app is because I hate selling my towers. But but to be good at the game on the app, you have to be rotating your towers and even selling some that you've invested in. And so that really, really works as well. I knew I was going to enjoy it from the rules. You get that feeling when you've read so many rule books. But what I missed from the rule book was how connected to the app it was. And I think that's what I've always found, right from Zombie Tsunami, Jetpack Joyride as well. Just the way the translations are faithful yet still board games. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the IP because to an outsider, kind of the biggest IPs, your Angry Birds, your Fruit Ninja, your Jetpack Joyride, Kingdom Rush, although popular, probably isn't as well known in the minds of the masses. And yet, it seems to be going really well on Kickstarter. It's it's on Kickstarter at least. It's done better than Fruit Ninja. I don't know if it's done better than
Fruit Ninja. I tell you what, Fruit Ninja is the only Kickstarter we canceled.
Yeah.
And it did. It was on course to do about $30,000 in a month, and we just got too ambitious, and the IP didn't turn out to be the way it should have been. So I can share a little bit with you what we've learned working with IPs for the last 2 years, and because there's definitely we have made some bad choices. I mean, it turns out. You learn or you succeed, right? And there's been a lot of learning, let's say, for us in the last 2 years. Turns out, and it sounds so obvious as I say it out loud now, but it was not at the time. Turns out, reach is absolutely worth nothing if the people you're reaching are not somewhat emotionally invested with the thing they've seen. Yeah. And so, Fruit Ninja had 1.5 billion downloads. I mean, it's really hard to comprehend 1.5 billion downloads. I mean, it's a quarter of the worldwide population. It's absolutely insane the number of people who have played this game. Yet, Fruit Ninja has been literally one of the worst performing IP for us. And the stepping back, it's become clear as of why. I mean, none of the player of the video game or very few part of this player are emotionally connected to this IP. The so-called retention in the free-to-play business is it's KPI it's a key performance indicator that tells you how many times did someone come back to play a video game, and it is rather low or very low on Fruit Ninja. Kingdom Rush has only 20 million downloads, something like this. So it's like, in perspective, it's super small IP compared to others. But the people who have played it for months, if not years, and also are. There is also one last thing about Kingdom Rush, which is pretty spectacular as an IP, is the fact that the game is. There's one version of the game that's become free to play. But has not been monetized the way that other free-to-play have been monetized in the last 5 years with very aggressive promotions. And in a way, this game is pure in terms of game design. You pay your $5 at the entrance, and then you can play normally. Where a lot of the mobile IP have this side effect that they are free, but yet those video game developers still feed the studio and will have sometimes very aggressive approach in terms of monetization. Definitely, at the same time, also changing their game design to have more of this monetization. So 2 years later, what's clear for us is that the number of downloads is not a valid KPI for what's a good board game adaptation as an IP. And what's more important is how much this game has been played, and also how well does it naturally translate into a board game. Yeah. I think everybody could think Kingdom Rush, I can imagine how this could look in 3D with miniatures. Oh, that sounds great. Where when we said, we're doing the Fruit Ninja board game, people were like, but how? And it's not a bad question to ask, right? Yeah. Even though we had some really clever game design submitted to us the same way that we did for Kingdom Rush, still there was this apprehension saying like, really? A board game? Almost every time. So so that's where we are today. And as a matter of fact, though, it's so hard to find the right IP that as a studio, we are actually on a very strong shift and pivot towards what Chronicles of Crime has made us successful. It turns out, we make video game adaptation as board game because we come from the video game industry and we know all those IP owners. They were friends. We have been doing the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco for the last 8 years rather than doing Gen Con. And so those were the normal questions. But it turns out a better heritage from our past is the fact that we know how to make mobile games.
Yeah.
And that actually very few publishers in the world today, besides FFG and a couple others, know how to do hybrid games. So Kingdom Rush is the last signed video game we have right now.
Okay.
I'm not saying we'll never do another video game, adaptation, and actually we might. But what's coming up from us in the next for the rest of the year and 2020 is a lot more app-driven, story-driven stuff.
Okay.
More Chronicles of Crime, obviously, but we have started to develop internal engine, like something that's kind of similar to Chronicles of Crimes, but that's more targeted towards adventure rather than crime solving.
Yeah.
And we are partnering with other board game publishers. I can't share any names, I can't share any things, but basically we're partnering with other board game publishers to take their board games and bring them into a more story-driven adventure.
Cool. Well, what we'll do is we'll go into a part 3 because this live one's going to cut out again. So we'll talk about Chronicles of Crimes particularly. So if you're joining us now, we're just going to finish this one because my software has a trial limit, and then we'll come back and talk about Chronicles of Crime. So stick with us. For us, it will be seamless. For you, you'll have to refresh the page. Sorry about that. Okay, we're back with Vince again, and we're going to talk about Chronicles of Crime, which has been a massive success for you guys, and obviously came out at the same time as Portal Games Detective. But I think what was interesting with that is the two games were both app-driven, had the app elements, but different. And I think that really kind of obviously helped a little bit having that kind of competition. I think probably helped both projects in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, so for the story, I know very well Ignacy and Portal because we are just 100 kilometers away from each other. We're both based in Poland. So in January 2018. We both realized that we have a detective game coming out this year, and we're like, "Oh crap, we need to meet." So I actually drove to Portal's office one morning. It took me like 40-minute drive.
Okay.
We look at each other's game, and it was with a huge relief that we realized that we don't have the same audience. So almost a year before its launch, we already met and checked that we were not in competition with each other. And realizing this, we're like, okay, so let's make 2018 the year of the detective, and support each other on this. So he gave me a prototype. I gave him a prototype. We both tried the game, contacted each other, said, "Oh my God, it's great what you've done." He said, "It's great what you've done too." And we're so different that we can really So we have two very different games. Basically, his game is a 3 hours expert game, kind of a modern version of Sherlock Holmes Considered Detective with kind of this heaviness and heavy text, where we are in a much more casual ground with Chronicles of Crime. It's a game without rulebook. It's a game that you can play just with a mobile. You don't need a PC.
Yeah.
And it's much shorter text, much shorter story as well. It's about an hour 20 minutes in general, except for the much harder one, which are closer to 2 hours. Yeah. And so that was a great relief and actually a very exciting adventure to do together. Actually, we did a video together in October, I think, or December to kind of sum up that year and that release. And Chronicles of Crime for us has been absolutely mind-blowing. We have sold almost 200,000 base games since October last year, which is above, it's fivefold higher than any other game we've sold so far.
Okay, wow.
Lifetime. So the game has been now, or is being translated into 14 different languages. The latest edition is Hungarian, Czech, Brazilian. We have Bulgarian even. We have obviously Russian. It's been Russia, Korea, China, Italian, Spanish, Polish, French, and English. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but that's already a pretty good stack. So it's also the game that has been the most translated out of World Portfolio. And we just released Noir in about, when was that? It was a month and a half ago. It's been very well received. We're already reprinting in French and reprinting in English the game, the expansions. So.
Yeah, I think what I found, particularly with the base game, which I've looked through all the Noir stuff, and because there's a little bit extra rules because of the change. But what I found in the base game is you do the tutorial, you do the first one, and then you're like, okay, you think you kind of get how it goes, and then you play the first scenario again with someone else, and it plays out completely different. And I didn't find the location that I found almost straight away, and then you start to realise how this is not just choose your own adventure, where if you do that, you're always going to go to the same page. There's just so many multiple paths through to get to the same information. There's kind of a more efficient one, but you can come round the back and go in, and that just blew my mind.
Which make those episodes incredibly heavy to develop and
test.
And actually, so we released the editor for people, and I'm super excited that there's already 3 scenarios that have been released by amateur writers, so it's pretty exciting, and there's plenty more on the way.
Brilliant.
But what people don't realize is that you can take. We work really hard, and especially David Sicurelli, the author, takes a very specific point on having a non-linear adventure.
Yes.
Based on what you scan, based on what you find, you can go this way or you can go another way, and all of this will lead ultimately, hopefully, to the conclusion of the story. But it's absolutely not linear, because we knew if it was linear, it would not have given the same sensation and satisfaction that the game has right now, which is a sensation of mastery and freedom. You really feel like you're in charge, and you really feel that the decisions you make are meaningful, that they are not just the rail that the game is putting you on. And this was super important for us.
And I think it means as well, even if you've played through a scenario and you're showing some friends, for example, you might know who's guilty, but just like a detective or a police officer, you have to prove that. And that's not necessarily... You could answer all the questions correctly from your previous knowledge, but if you have to prove it within that journey, and that's quite interesting. And I liked... so Noir, one of the differences is it replaces the specialists, so you don't have the forensic people you can ring up, and you have these actions. And I think it was something I could see... Through multiple plays of the same scenarios in the base game, you could see people reacting differently, getting a bit bristly if you ask them a wrong, question. Mm-hmm. But Noir really expands that with those options you were saying.
Yes. So it's the 4 actions are bribing, intimidating, breaking in, and following. And so if you start with the first 2, which is breaking in, intimidating and bribing.
Yeah.
Every time you meet someone, on top of asking the natural questions, you can also go any of those 2 ways. Obviously, there's a lot of consequences to your choices.
Yeah.
And if you intimidate a policeman, you're very likely to get busted and die. And actually, as a matter of fact, the very first 5 minutes of the very first episode of Noir, we present you with that choice so that you learn, and because we make you die there. I mean, done.
Yeah.
If you try to intimidate a policeman in that very first 5 minutes, we told you that, look, there are limits to your choices here, and you need to be careful with what you do. And so you make you die and start, but because it's only 5 minutes, it really has very little consequences to it's not like. But we wanted to do this experience, and so but it's really rewarding. It's really was like, oh my God, what should we do? This guy is obviously retaining information right now, and you don't have an infinite amount of money. I think you start with $2 or $3. I mean, $2 or 3 bribing token if you may. if I may. And so you really need to choose who and what and how you want to influence things. Stéphane Anquetil is an amazing writer. I mean, he's I've met him many times, and every time I meet with him, he talks about, and I really appreciate about this writer because he constantly talks about emotional intent about writing. And so there's plenty of ways you can look at writing stories. You could have a very gameplay oriented, like I want people to think this way, or I want people to challenge them this way. But his way of thinking is very more emotional. Here's how I want people to feel, and I thought you can really, feel that in his game, which I think is really almost above the base game. It's the way he makes you work and think is very, very good.
That's great. Well, we're coming to an end. Rather than doing a part 4, we'll get you back on another time when I've got the full software running, so we can not have the gaps. I think, though, like from my experience with Chronicles of Crime, if you ever go back to Kickstarter with it, a great stretch goal will be little police notepads, so you can take all your notes, maybe some dry white ones, because I'm always busting out the paper, getting too old to remember this stuff. Thanks very much for watching Zatu Live. Sorry for the bitty nature of it today. Like I say, we're testing out some new software. We thought we'd get Vince on. Well, I didn't realise I had a 10-minute limit. But we'll be back and we'll get Vince on again because he's just got so much insight into some of the interesting sides and the stuff with the nature. So thanks very much, Vince. And keep checking out Zatu and Zatu Live for more content.
Bye-bye.